Mr. Cannabis.
PAR stands for the photosynthetic active radiation and refers to the wavelengths of light in the visible range from 400 to 700 nanometers. This is also the term used to determine the type and volume of light needed for optimal plant yields and health. Grow light systems use PAR to mimic the natural light and can be optimized with other light solutions. The shorter the wavelength, the more energy is carried within the wave. The light spectrum is important to plant growth, and different wavelengths have different effects on the plant. UVB light has an inhibition effect on plant growth, preventing growth and reducing plant disease, with a strong disinfection and sterilization effect. UVA light activates the plant's natural defense mechanisms and increases crop yield, protein, sugar, acid, and organic compound production, such as resins. Violet to blue light is used by plants during both the vegetative and flowering phases, promoting chlorophyll production, resulting in strong, durable, and healthy stems and leaves. Green light was initially believed to be not used for photosynthesis, but recent research has shown that it can drive plant growth. Yellow to orange light weakens photosynthetic activity, but orange light near the red spectrum helps process photosynthesis due to chlorophyll B's affinity for the spectrum. Red light regulates growth and development for plants and enhances photosynthesis. While it is beneficial during the vegetative phase, it's mostly used during the flowering and fruiting phase, supporting seed germination, root growth, and the flowering of plant, as well as improving the taste of any fruits. However, if grown only under red light, the plants will have a stretched and elongated appearance. Far red light promotes excessive growth, including leaf expansion, resulting in larger leaves and stem internodes. Photons are counted in micromoles. 1 micromole is 602 quadrillion photons. But photons from wavelengths lower than 400 nanometers and higher than 700 nanometers aren't counted in PAR equations. Different lamps produce different amounts of PAR output. For example, a good 600 watt, 230 volt HPS will emit around 1.8 micromoles per watt, or 1080 micromoles total, while a good 1000 watt 400 volt lamp will emit around 2.1 micromoles per watt, or 2100 micromoles total. So besides the spectrum range that a particular light emits, you should also pay attention to the PAR efficiency as well. We'll go more into that though in section 8.2, types of bulbs, and 8.3, ballasts and reflectors. So watts are a measure of power consumption, while lumens are a measure of visible light output. Raw lumens are a measure of the theoretical output of light, while effective lumens are a measure of the total power output of a light source, taking into consideration electrical and optical losses and providing a better representation of the useful visible light produced. Candle power is an obsolete term that has been replaced by Candela. Candela are similar to lumens in that they both deal with light output as perceived by the human eye. The key difference between the two is that Candela is specifically a measurement of directional intensity. 1 candela is close to the light intensity produced by an ordinary candle perceived by the human eye, and addresses how bright the light source is in a particular direction. Foot candles and Lux both measure the amount of visible light that falls onto a surface, but use different standard measuring systems, empirical and metric respectively. A single foot candle is the amount of light that falls on a surface that is 1 foot away from a single candle. And lux is the amount of light from a single candle that falls on a surface 1 meter away, or 1 lumen per square meter. 1 foot candle is equivalent to 10.764 lux. So, lumen is the total amount of light from a source, candela is the directional amount of light, and lux in foot candle is the intensity that falls onto the surface. And here's some general reading examples just to put things into perspective. PPF is the term used to define the measurement of PAR, and it stands for photosynthetic photon flux. Its value determines how much PAR is being produced by any one lighting system over a period of a second. PPF is the second essential ingredient in your recipe to perfect the perfect lighting for your grow space. This is what helps you establish exactly how much of the light your lighting system is producing can be used by your plants for photosynthesis. PPF is measured in micromoles per second, Again, 1 micromole is around 602 quadrillion photons. The third part of your PAR equation is the PPFD. This stands for photosynthetic photon flux density, and it does more than just measure the ppf. It also measures the surface area. PPFD is measured in micromoles per square meter per second, which establishes exactly how much PAR photons are landing on a specific area. So PPFD is all about how many of those essential photosynthetic photons are actually impacting the growth area and how well those lights are working when it comes to their output. For the grower, it's important to make sure that the PPFD data that you get from your grow light manufacturer is accurate and covers the entire area of the light. It's relatively easy to massage this information, so consider factors such as distance from the light source, a number of measurements that account for the average, and the minimum-maximum ratio before you buy. So some general PPFD levels for growth phases are: seedlings and clones should get about 100 to 300 micromoles per square meter per second. Vegetative growth, 250 to 600 micromoles per square meter per second. And bloom and flowering, about 500 to 1050 plus micromoles per square meter per second. Though I would like to go into the PPFD of flowering a bit more, as there is some interesting research information as of late. Now, this is just an excerpt of an abstract of the paper, but it gives you an idea of the research advances being made. The purpose of the study was to analyze the relationship between light intensity, cannabis yields, and profitability. We also look for evidence that spectrum differences across broad-spectrum horticulture lights and general-purpose LEDs affect the relationship between yield and light intensity. Finally, we discuss the financial return in increasing light intensity in order to increase yields. Quote, "We found that yields increase linearly with light intensity up to at least 1500 micromoles per square meter per second, which is at least twice the intensity that is most commonly used by cannabis growers. That relationship did not appear to be influenced by spectrum quality differences among the different lamps included in the study. Finally, for all the intensity ranges that we considered, the value of the gain in yields from increasing light intensity far exceeded the cost of using more electricity. It was predicted that cannabis yield would exhibit a saturation response to increasing light intensity, therefore signifying an optimal light intensity range for indoor cannabis production. However, the yield results from this trial demonstrated that cannabis's immense plasticity for exploring the incident lighting environment by effectively increasing marketable biomass up to an extremely high for indoor production light intensities. Even under ambient CO2, the linear increases in yield indicated that the availability of PAR photons was still limiting the whole canopy photosynthesis at the PPFD levels as high as 1800 micromoles per square meter per second, or a DLI of 78 moles per square meter per day. So as you can see, cannabis can really utilize an immense amount of PAR when given the proper environment, especially considering that 1800 micromoles per square meter per second was done with ambient CO2 and not with CO2 supplementation. In fact, the maximum PPFD of full sun at noon at the equator is 2500 micromoles per square meter per second, which means, depending on where you're growing, cannabis under the ideal conditions can basically utilize all of the light from the sun that it's receiving. So just keep that in mind next time you're wondering how much light is too much, especially if all the other elements of your grow room are dialed in. Now, I just mentioned that cannabis can use a DLI of 78 moles per square meter per day. What's a DLI?